As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Mike began his career in the electronic assembly and equipment industry in 1985. Mike founded Aqueous Technologies in 1992 in response to the Montreal Protocol and the resulting international treaty banning most popular cleaning and defluxing solvents. Mike is an internationally known speaker on the subject of increasing reliability through contamination removal and cleanliness qualification techniques and procedures. Mike was awarded Distinguished Speaker status with SMTA in 2018 and received the Rich Freiberger Best of Conference Award in 2019. Mike is the conference chair of the SMTA Pan-Pacific Strategic Electronics Symposium held annually in Hawaii. Mike is also a member of the SMTA Global Board of Directors, where he is Vice President of Communications. Locally, Mike is Vice President of Technical Programs for the Los Angeles and Orange County SMTA chapter. Mike is the host of the popular Reliability Matters podcast, available on all major podcast sites. Mike, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Andrew.
Awesome. So you have a really interesting niche that you're in, and I'd like you to explain a little bit about what that is and what your ninja skill is.
Oh, wow. Okay. It is a niche. It's a niche's niche, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in the electronic assembly industry. So our industry builds everything that's in front of you right now, everything that's making this podcast possible. We build and assemble circuit boards that go into pretty much everything we use today in daily life, from commercial stuff to aerospace, defense, space, medical, all that. And within that big realm of manufacturing electronics, we are specifically in the electronics cleaning business. So we build these very expensive, to put it in a layman term, glorified dishwashers that clean circuit boards after they are assembled, after they're soldered. And the purpose of that is to remove contamination, which would otherwise render the board less reliable. So that's the world we're in.
Because working with, like, the one thing a lot of people don't know about me is that my associate's degree is in electrical engineering. Microcomputer architecture was my specialty, so I kind of have an idea about this, and it's a very small little piece of dust on a very complicated board makes is a big issue, especially
and the residues that we remove, they're ionic in nature, which means they're conductive, and if they are left on the assembly and subjected to any amount of moisture, just humidity, just normal climactic humidity, you actually get this growth. It's called electrochemical migration. You actually get this growth on the board, which are metal crystals growing between conductors. Now, you don't need to have a degree in electrical engineering to know that if you sprinkle metal shavings on a circuit that's plugged in, it's going to short out, and that's what happens. So it's super important today, especially with boards being much smaller than they used to be and components being so close together. The amount of contamination that any board can tolerate is far less today than it was even 10 years ago. So cleaning is, I always tell people, we build machines that don't build anything. We build machines that make things you build more reliable. That's our place in the world. So you're welcome.
Your machines are not the mechanical version of a visionary; they're the mechanical version of an implementer and dealing with this.
Exactly.
Elsewhere.
Exactly. Let the visionaries build their vision. We'll just make sure they work for years to come.
Exactly. It's a niche that not a lot of people know about and not a lot of people think about. It's one of those things that makes sense when you first explain it, or when you explain it and people have a general concept of what's going on, but you never think about that, like dirty circuit boards.
Yeah, you don't. And it's to the point. It's so specific that if I'm on vacation in the pool and drinking a cocktail and guys tend to hover together and go, "What do you do for a living?" And so my friends, when we do a boys trip, we go to Mexico every year. We do a boys trip down to Mexico, and we all decide, usually in the bar at the airport prior to departure on our way down there, we'll come up with fake careers just to kind of A, for fun, and B, just to protect the people we're going to be talking to, right? Because you start talking about if I start talking about what I do to an average person, on vacation, you kind of get the they just turn around and run away. They're like, oh, I gotta go. My wife's calling, so we all have fun with that. We all just kind of make up careers. So,
That's great. That's awesome. But I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons for me, at least, that I work with entrepreneurs and I only work with entrepreneurs, is it's that passion for what we do. It's part of what the way the podcast is about, the hustle and grind. Is the reason we left our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. is it's a completely different work-life balance. We are so passionate about what we do. Like if I talk about training, I know exactly what look my mom is going to have on her face when I start talking about kind of some of the cool training stuff that I came up with, which she
uh-huh.
really doesn't want to hear about. She's going to be really nice about it, but you can
Oh, that's
tell
nice.
she's
That's
zoned out.
nice,
She's already
honey.
thinking about dinner.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, when you say 8 to 10,
Yeah.
I think in the early days, that's 8 a.m. Monday to 10 p.m. Wednesday, right? I mean, I've been
Yep.
there.
Oh, absolutely. I call it the suck. And it's one of those
Yes.
things. It's sometimes just, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's that passion and that passion only is what keeps us going, especially in the beginning. It's just we are so passionate about something that, again, totally different balance.
You
Totally,
know,
there is a balance there, but it's totally different. Yeah.
yeah, Andrew, the skills, I put in air quotes, the skills I brought to the table when I started my company um, were passion. Okay, that's important. Ego, that
Mhm.
turned out to be important. Um, Naivety,
Mhm.
arrogance, and a very poor assessment of risk. Those are the attributes I brought to the table. And thank God,
Yeah.
because were it not for those attributes, I would have been in the statistical pool where the US Bureau of Labor Statistics claims that 75% of all business startups ultimately fail. 75%. Only 25% get out the other end.
Yeah.
Uh, and thank God I didn't know that. That's kind of the ignorance. Because if I knew that, I'd be too afraid to start it.
Mhm.
And, I didn't know what I didn't know. Now, those skills are often helpful, quote unquote skills, those attributes are helpful to start a business.
Yeah.
They will kill your business if you don't change those skill sets, obviously. So it's always a question of either learning new skill sets or acquiring it through good hiring. But either way, um, I sometimes am embarrassed to think of how naive and arrogant and egocentric I was, but I am thankful I was that way because I would have failed. I would have said, okay, done. I'm out, right? And I didn't. I just kept sticking with it because I thought I was, I'm not going to fail. My ego won't let me fail. My passion won't let me fail.
Yeah. And I think, Mike, there's something I want to add to with that. When you said it was naive or being naive about something, what I really think it is that us entrepreneurs, we have the ability to be able to say, I reject your reality, I substitute my own. And we're the
Absolutely.
ones that are passionate enough to be able to just step in and go, we were talking in the green room earlier about how both of us were, we have one thing in common that was kind of taking apart any appliance that was in our
Yes.
houses when we were young,
Yes.
just to
Figure out
see
how
if
they
it
worked.
worked.
Yes, exactly.
And it's this different mindset that we walk into a situation with. Instead of saying, well, these are the normal confines that we have. This is how we've done it for years. This is it. We go, how does that work? What happens when I push that button? The whole thing blows up. It usually goes badly, but I don't think it's really, I think people think when they think naive, they think dumb. What it really is the Japanese have this concept of a beginner's mind, entering everything as everything is new.
Yes.
And I think it's Shoshin, but I'm probably going to be wrong about that. But I'll have to go look it up again. But entering as a beginner's mind and saying, what are we going to do? And I think as entrepreneurs, that's something that we bring to the world. And I think it's a very necessary thing in the world. We're the disruptors. I think that's the term we use to it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think beginner's mindset is a great reminder for those that have had some success in business, that are starting to get confident, maybe even cocky, and then
Mhm.
they hear an idea pitched by maybe a younger employee or someone, and it's real easy for me, or probably anyone, to go, "Nah, I've done that, doesn't work." That beginner's mindset is very helpful because maybe it didn't work because it was too early to work. Maybe it didn't work because of me. Um, and that was the hardest thing when I started scaling and I started hiring a team of very talented people, most of them younger than myself. It was really, that's the ego check thing. It was like, they would come up with all these ideas, and I'm like, oh, yeah, poor guy. Do I break it to him that that's a stupid idea, or do I just pretend to listen? But but my team has reinvented my own company to the point where my job is to stay out of their way. They're amazing. And they're doing things that I thought about and rejected early on. And if I was still completely in control of my company, if I was still making every decision like I used to, we would not be the company we are today. So it's important to remind ourselves of, as you said, the beginner's mindset, because that's where we learn. That's where we are open to new opportunities and new challenges, new ideas, all that.
And that's where true innovation happens, is because of that.
Absolutely.
And it's so much fun.
It
I like
is.
breaking things. It's great. I like trying to see what's going
Yes.
to happen, poke something and see what happens.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You
it's-
talked about you used to go around pushing buttons. My dad used to always tell me we'd go to the store and he would always look at me and give me this warning ahead of time, like, son, look with your eyes, not your hands. Because I was on pushing buttons and, turning up knobs in stereo stores, electronic stores. I was just, I'm very tactile, right? So, I like to learn with my hands and my eyes.
This is a story very few people know as well. When I was really little, like not even talking, my first word was light. I had this thing with light switches. If I walked past a light switch, I was flipping it, period.
Yep.
It's going to happen. My parents have like a trigger issue with light switches at this point,
To this
because I
day,
want to see
right,
what would
yeah.
happen. It's like, let's see what happens, let's see what this switch does.
Yep, I'm
I
that
still
way
do
too.
have a
Put
thing
me
with light
around
switches.
buttons. My wife keeps telling me that when I'm old and senile, riddled with dementia, she's just going to have someone make up a board with a whole bunch of buttons on it and just sit it in front of me, and I will just push buttons all day long thinking something's happening. I'll be very amused by that.
I've had to have people tell me occasionally buttons aren't toys. So, yep, I get
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look with your eyes, Andrew, not your hands. Yes.
Mike, that sounds like, I think, the next big thing.
Yeah.
I think we need to make that happen. But so let's go back a little bit to electronics and cleaning, because one of the things I love to hear are the stories behind how you got into it, especially such a niche market. Was this just a random going, I really just want to clean buttons for the rest of my life? Or what helped you to get to that point where, or what was the sequence of events that happened to get you to your niche?
Yeah, it's a 4-hour story, but I'll try and make it about 5 minutes. I was working for an equipment manufacturer in this industry as a sales guy. I was their salesperson, their intergalactic sales manager. And at the same time, the solvents that were used to clean circuit boards were being banned by treaty. There was actually a treaty signed in Montreal, Canada, called the Montreal Protocol, where all these countries got together, and it had to do with CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, and it had to do with ozone depletion. So the solvents that we were using had a very high chlorofluorocarbon content, CFC content, and they were, according to scientists, destroying the ozone. So the US government and all the signatories of the treaty, all the different countries, signed an agreement to ban the production of all CFC-based solvents and other products within 10 years. And that was 1989. So I had this idea. I saw a company that was basically taking a dishwasher, an under-counter dishwasher, and converting it, calling it a circuit board cleaner using basically soap and water. And it was dorky and it was amateurish, but they were onto something. They just didn't do it well. It was poorly executed, and they were unapologetic that it was just a dishwasher with a fancy controller on it to make it run longer cycles. And I'm like, okay, it does work, but they can't sell it because it's embarrassing. No one wants that on their production floor. So I had this idea that we should come up with something, but actually make it engineering sexy, lots of gauges and dials and lights and all that. And my boss said, no, I'm not interested. It's not a good idea. And I'm like, please, 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 please. And it's like, no, 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 no. So finally I made a pitch to him. I said, well, what if I design it? Because I'm pretty clever. What if I design it and do all the work, take 100% of the risk, fund the development on my own, which was a hollow offer because I didn't have any money. And then I'll just bring it to you and see what you think. Okay. You want to waste your time and money? Fine. So I did that, and I worked with a childhood friend of mine who was far more clever than me, and we designed this machine. About 6 months later, we brought it to the company, and my boss looked at it and said, "Wow, that's nice. Does it work?" I'm like, "Yeah, it works very well. And we happen to have a trade show coming up in a couple of weeks, biggest trade show in North America within our industry. I said, let's just stick the company name on it, throw it in the booth, see what happens. He goes, okay. Well, we sold 5 of them right off the floor. And I'm like, oh, be careful what you ask for. Mm-hmm. So the product was selling exceptionally well. The problem was my friend and I were building them at night. I'm selling them by day. And it turns out I'm a much better product designer than I am a manufacturer. I just don't have the skill or the patience to put things together. And I can take things apart all day long, but putting them together is a tough one. So I finally realized that, okay, we can't keep up. Our deliveries are running late, and it's frustrating my own employer. And I don't want to start a company. That was never my goal. I wanted to pursue this product. So I went back to my boss and said, hey, I'll sell it to you for my out of pocket, and then the company can own it. And, I'll be fat, dumb, and happy selling them all day long. How much did you spend? $15,000, mostly credit cards. He couldn't write that check fast enough. So I sold it to him, and I had this degree of arrogance. We were going into a product design meeting to come up with the next products that our company would offer in the upcoming years. And I thought, false expectations. I thought I would be carried in on a chariot and someone would fan me with grape leaves. And, I'm King Mike because I kind of saved the company. I came up with this home run of a product, and the company was making lots of money on it, and good for Mike. And I pitched an idea, and the next generation of machines would be more environmentally sound. They would be completely closed loop, so zero discharge, not a drop of any fluid goes down the drain. And I figured out a way to do that. And someone else pitched an idea, which I thought was dorky and stupid. And he looked at both of us and he went with the other idea. He goes, no, we're going to do this. And I looked at him and I said, Jack, his name was Jack, I think you're making a mistake. And he looked at me and he said one word that started my company instantly. He looked at me. The word was 4 letters long and it started with F. And it's not that word, Andrew. He looked at me when I said, I think you're making a mistake. And he goes, fine. Mm-hmm. That fine was dismissive. It just took all my spirit, my gusto, my enthusiasm, and just deflated that balloon instantly. And in my head, conceptually, I was like, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to prove him wrong. And that's where ego comes in. And I went back home, much to the frustration of my wife. I reconverted my garage back into a mad scientist studio and started designing the next generation of machine, which he said no to. And then a few months later, I went back and gave my 2 weeks notice. And I thought, well, I'm gonna be very upfront, very transparent, and tell him I'm offering my 2 weeks notice, but I have this idea that I'm pursuing, and I might be a competitor. So if you think it's more appropriate that I leave right now, I'm happy to leave right now. But I'm giving you a 2 weeks notice. He asked me to stay for a month, which also pissed me off a little bit because I'm like, he didn't take me seriously at all. I was no threat to him. Okay. So I stayed for a month. On the way home from work, my last day, I signed a lease on a little 1,200 square foot multi-tenant business park, space, and set up the company. 3 months later, he sued me. And we actually went to trial, and he lost on everything, but I lost all the money I'd saved to start the company. And I was deep in debt with the attorney. It took 2 years to pay off the attorney. But so I kind of refer to myself as the reluctant entrepreneur. I was more passionate about the product than I was about running a company. It turns out the only way to get the product launched was to run a company because no one else would do it. And that's what got me started.
Now, what eventually happened as far as the product? Because as far as what I understand about the machine that you had developed, when the Montreal Treaty had come into play, this would have been a bigger deal, meaning there would be some environmental impacts on it, and your product, I'm thinking, would come out on top if it were up against another product, meaning just being more economically friendly and environmentally.
We definitely had a head start. But another thing happened, Andrew. My timing wasn't great. They say necessity is the mother of invention, right? So one of the inventions was a product like mine, and others started doing it. The other invention was a certain type of flux, which is primarily what we're removing, that didn't have to be cleaned. So the concept of no clean technology came out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, we just came up with a cleaner. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the industry said, wait a minute, we don't have to clean at all. And the high reliability manufacturers, the military, medical, space, high rel communications, anything that if it fails, people die, they never embraced this no clean philosophy. All the commercial people threw out their cleaners and just dove headfirst into this no clean. So we still had a market, but it was all super high rel. So our customers in those early days were all NASA, various militaries, medical manufacturers, aerospace manufacturers, civilian aviation, all that stuff. Anything that really is high reliability. They were our primary customers. Over the years, the commercial manufacturers have come back to cleaning in droves because boards are so miniaturized and the tolerance for residues is so low that even this no clean technology is frequently not as effective as it used to be. So people are kind of coming back to cleaning. So our business is doing great. But the early days, about 70% of the potential marketplace disappeared with the invention of this no clean technology. They might as well have said, don't buy from Mike technology, because that was the effect of it.
Yeah. For those that don't know what flux is a chemical you put on before soldering that cleans the surface, and it's sticky and it's tacky and it gets all over everywhere. It's often resin. So sometimes it's a resin.
It's all resin based. It's pine sap based at the end
basically.
of the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's where it comes from, pine sap and a bunch of other stuff in it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically it always has to be cleaned off because it's just a byproduct of it. And it's a necessary evil, but having something where that doesn't have to be cleaned off, it sounds like something so trivial, but it's actually a major issue with manufacturing because now I don't have to, yeah.
Skip a whole process. There's all these process steps that you go through to produce a functional circuit board.
Yeah.
And this was one of the processes that most manufacturers got to get rid of, which was great.
Yeah. And if you're spending 10 cents on something, but you're making 1 million of them, that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of
scale
savings.
of it. Yeah. The economy of scale was great enough where many manufacturers saved a significant amount of money by skipping what would otherwise be deemed as a trivial step.
Exactly. And sometimes it's those little pennies on a large scale really do save a lot of money in the long term.
Yeah.
So,
well, American Airlines for years and years and years did not paint their airplanes. They were just shiny, polished aluminum. And they did that to save fuel because, the average amount of paint on a commercial aircraft weighs whatever it weighs,
it's a couple 100 pounds. I mean, it's not like it's
a few hundred pounds of paint.
Yeah.
But, if you had one airplane flying once a month, you wouldn't bother, you just keep it painted. But they had such a large fleet that were traveling, millions and millions and millions of miles every year. It saved them significant amount of money on fuel. So it's the same concept.
Exactly. So I know when you first get started, you told your story about getting started and a lot of the hiccups that you ran. And I think it's something I call the suck. As entrepreneurs, we all have to go through it. It's kind of our war wounds. It's our thing. It makes us significantly stronger people, and it gives us the skills we need to really build a larger business. But in those first little bits, I like to ask people, what was something that just kept you going in those first days when things were sucking and everything was costing money and you weren't making anything and you were deep in the suck?
Ego kept me going. I needed to prove to the world, to myself, to my family, to my friends, and most importantly, to Jack, my ex-boss, that I was not going to fail, and he should have done it. It was total ego that kept me going. I am not a good gambler. I go to Vegas once in a while. I live in Southern California, so we're just a few hours drive from Vegas, and I'll go there once in a while. And I'm not a good gambler. I love to win, but I hate to lose. I kick myself. I'm like, worked so hard for anything, and I just gave it away to a company that's overflowing with money. And so that I'd hate to lose really helped me because it just kept me going in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. If I had read the tea leaves, if I had hired consultants, if I had done all this stuff in the early days, which eventually I did in the later days, everyone would have said, put the horse down, right? You're just pouring more money down the drain. And technically that was correct. but I was not going to lose. I was not going to fail. And I had the irony in not going to fail is you have to fail a ton of times. And, you know, but I didn't view that as an ultimate failure. I view that as okay, I'm not going to do that again. I learned something and just kept going. But the ego really helped me. And I'm, ego is often viewed as a negative trait. And of course, its extreme, it definitely can be. But it also is part of survival. It's almost a Neanderthalic survival thing. And it kept me going. It just kept me like, okay, nope. And I decided to shut down the business 25 times for 8 seconds. And then like, nope, my ego would go, Mike, really? You just picture Jack reading in the trades that this company went out of business and he'll be popping a bottle of champagne open. Like, nope, I'm not going to be that guy.
I'm just out of personal curiosity, you don't have to go too far into it, but do you have any contact with Jack anymore? Is it just sort of a thing later on where you see to kind of bring the thing full circle, or is it just more he kind of went on his own way and that's it?
After the lawsuit, after we won the lawsuit, he sold the company, and he's probably in his late 90s now, if he's still alive. And no, I thought about that. I thought about the reason he sued me was 100% emotional.
Yeah.
He treated me kind of like his son, and I was all in. I worked there 7 years. I was working day and night. I worked like it was my company. I don't do anything halfway. I dive into things and I get obsessive over whatever I'm involved in the moment. And he appreciated that. And when I quit, even though he turned down my idea, when I quit, he viewed that as a personal attack. And
got it.
There was no reason from a business standpoint. There was a 75% chance, probably even greater, that I wouldn't make it anyway. So he could have put me out of business for free.
Yeah.
But because he sued me, because I had all this anger and resentment and I had something to prove. And the irony was that the lawsuit that he spent and I spent a ton of money on gave me the strength and the passion to not fail. I'm grateful today, not in the moment, but today I'm very grateful for that experience. And it was the hardest thing in my entire life. I'm 64, and it's the hardest thing in my entire life I've ever gone through was that lawsuit. And it was hard on my family. It was stressful. It was hard doing business, fighting a lawsuit. It was hard financially. We ran out of money to the point where back in the day, we had postage meters, and this is before the internet. So if someone called up and said, I want a brochure, we would mail them a brochure. My postage meter was empty, and the minimum amount of postage I was allowed to put in it was $100. I didn't have $100. So I actually went through our company's garbage cans looking for envelopes that we had opened that came in the mail that had stamps that weren't properly canceled. They don't have the stamp over it. And I would cut out those and tape them on and send them, put them on the brochures and send them out. That's how bad things were. So I should have not pursued it, but I'm so thankful I did. And I thank Jack now, not in the moment, but now, because I don't think I would have had that stamina. I wouldn't have had that something to prove if I had just started it on my own and failed quietly.
Exactly. And I think it's something that we put this really negative connotation to ego and just sheer spite. And if it depends on the outlet, is I think the biggest thing. If it's an outlet against somebody and it's not productive, that's not a good thing. It's not a good use of your time.
That's right.
If it's, I'm going to show you, and then you succeed, and you use that as a passion, you use that with your passion for what you were doing, that can be constructive. And I think in that situation, it was definitely, I think the bump that you needed in order to be able to go through and do what you really needed to do, and what you honestly, I think, really wanted to do. Because I think that was really your passion, was to bring this to the market. And I don't want to say necessarily it was inevitable, but it worked out the way it was supposed to. And that was the
definitely. I refer to it, and I don't mean this in a this is totally metaphorical. I don't mean it in a religious way at all, but I call it the business gods,
Yes. Yep.
And I'm a huge believer in that our company has to be bigger than just us. It has to be, we have to have a greater goal than just selling widgets to people making money. We have to make the world a better place. We have to do something. And we're an extremely green company. We were the first company ever to come up with zero discharge technology. We changed the way our industry looks at the environment, at least in terms of cleaning. And one of the reasons we did that, customers weren't asking for it. They didn't care. But I'm just a strong believer that we have to make the world a better place. We have to be philanthropic. We have to support all sorts of causes, buy local, all that stuff that, sounds good. But I do believe that put a few credits in the business god category, because we totally should have failed at least a dozen or two times. And I think when it came to the business gods acting as a referee, it's like, on one hand, yeah, he's screwed up so many times, let's just let him fail. And then one of the business gods went, well, wait a minute, he's making the world a better place. Okay, give him a pass. And I say that kind of in jest, but I do believe that that companies should be more than themselves. The sum of all the employees, the sum of all the products, or the impact on the world needs to be greater than the sum of all of its parts.
Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's a duty for us that we have a very specific place in this world, and that is to innovate, that is to start these, to, like we said earlier, being naive or beginner's mind about things, and being able to say, I reject your reality. I'm substituting my own. We're going, let me go see if this works, and let me see if I can break it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we have a unique role in that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Almost to me, I think it's a duty. I really think, I believe in my personal philosophy, it's a duty of mine. I'm supposed to show people the other way to do things. I'm supposed to show people that there's another reality if they'd like to go in that direction,
Yeah. And if I'm wrong,
yeah.
who's hurt by it?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. I mean, I'm not being so bold as to, forcing change down people's throat. It's like, no, this is what we do as a company, and it's served us well. And, maybe we would have done as well without it. Maybe we would have done better without it, but I feel good. I sleep good at night, and my team sleeps good at night, and we're doing well. So it's like, ain't broke, don't fix.
True story. True story. Well, I don't know. As entrepreneurs, we might try to fix it, but
yeah. Well, the enemy of great is good. So I guess that if it ain't broke, don't fix it is not the best saying in every aspect, but in this context, I think it's appropriate.
Exactly. So, Mike, we're getting towards the end of the podcast, and I do have one question that I ask every person, and that is, what is one podcast or book that has had a significant impact on your life?
Yeah, I'm not much of a reader, except the nerd in me, technical journals. I devour technical journals and things like that. But one business book that really made an impact on me, I was so desperate for good advice that I went to the bookstore and bought Jim Collins' Good to Great. So the author is Jim Collins. The book is called Good to Great. And he did a survey of pairs of publicly traded companies. So a pair of companies that basically had the same types of products and sold to the same types of customers. One of them was Schick and Gillette. Gillette sells shaving cream and razors and, personal care products. So does Schick. And then he had pairs of similar of companies all across the spectrum. And he chose publicly traded companies because he had access to their finances, right? Because they're publicly traded, they're posted. And he determined one company would always do markedly better than the other. Every pair had a strong leader, and every pair had a strong trailer. And he looked at what are the common denominators within the companies that succeed, and what are the common denominators within the companies that succeed less. And he found a bunch of common traits across a number of industries. And he had like 10 things, maybe there was 20, but let's say 10 things that they all had in common on both the successful company and the less successful company. And one of the few that I remember today, one of the things he said is, you have to get the right people on the bus. And that was just a euphemism for, hire the right team. And I expanded that to, I need the right people on the bus, so I need the right team. But part of that bus was vendors, customers. We need the right customers. We need the right vendors. We need the right team. And I took that to heart because things were pretty bad, and we started firing customers. We hire our customers just as much as they hire us, right? I mean, people don't look at it that way. We choose or we should choose our customers. And I realized that we were attracting toxic customers, needy, toxic customers, because of our pricing model. We would lose no sale. This was the ego now coming back to bite me. The thing that saved me, this is now biting me. I didn't want anyone else to get the business. So, we would cut our prices. We would cut our prices 30 or 40% to the point where we were losing money just to get the sale. And when someone purchases things on price, if that's their leading question, how much does it cost? It's a certain type of customer that does that. And they also are the ones that won't maintain their equipment. They're also the ones that will constantly argue. They're also the ones that will pay you the latest, pay you late every single time because they're all about money. When we decided, okay, no more discounts, we actually raised our prices. We became a very top tier, from a sales price standpoint, a very top tier manufacturer. Those customers just went elsewhere. And it was like a Trojan horse, Andrew. We just sent them in to, devour our competitors from the inside out like a parasite. And when someone leads with, here's my problem, what can you do for me? That's the kind of customer we want. Of course, price is important, but if it leads with price, that's a red flag. Doesn't mean we don't sell to them, but it's a red flag. If we're going to lose, if you're going to fail fast. If you're going to lose a customer right away, and the signs are this is not a good customer anyway, let them go. Let them go. And the moment we stopped being concerned about revenue, we started getting revenue. The moment we stopped being concerned about so many things, and we just concentrated on making good decisions and working with the best customers in the industry, things just changed miraculously. Instantly, things changed. And these pairs of companies had a very similar experience. The ones that kept doing what they used to do just kept failing, and the ones that evolved and kind of brought their operations up to a higher octave did better. And then like, okay, yeah, so that's that book. Long answer to your short question. That book changed my view, as did many other things, but that book was instrumental in the early days.
Awesome. I love it. Hey, I'm the story guy. I'll always listen to a story. So that's always worth it. It's always worth it to me. There's so much information in them. And thank you very much, talking about information. Thank you so much for sharing some awesome information here today. This has been a lot of fun, Mike. Thank you again. Really honored to have you on the podcast.
Well, thanks for doing what you're doing. I've listened to several of your podcasts now, and I've enjoyed every one so far. So I don't know if I'll enjoy this one, but because you have a sketchy guest, but thanks for doing what you do. I like the pay it forward kind of attitude that you have.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Mike, check out the link in the description.